that's why I'm like, this Project Bluebeam thing.
Exactly. I was like, this is a perfect step into our conversation about Project Bluebeam, which the pandemic just goes hand in hand with the New World Order. I mean, everybody that knows that this wasn't about a virus knows that it was because of that.
Yeah.
Right? At least for some restructuring of a economy, at very least, if not a complete restructuring of governments, which is where eventually it might go to, or establishments, or the way people move around.
Well,
And
it's
what liberties
definitely
they have.
becoming a totalitarian regime real quick. And okay, so like, and that's actually the end goal of Project Bluebeam. But like, let's summarize what Project Bluebeam is. Okay. So, okay, Project Bluebeam is, was it this one journalist, the Sergey Moonstaff, or was it from another source? I know he was a primary source. He died in 1996, and in 1994 he published a paper about Project Bluebeam, which he did a bunch of research on. And essentially he said it's like a step 4 plan for totalitarian one world government to take over, and that they would, like, step 1 is that they basically would stage archaeological finds that would make it that and earthquakes where archaeological stuff would be found, and they would false proof that that brought like all religions together, like that we kind of got Christianity wrong, we kind of got Muslim wrong, we there's actually we're misinterpreting some of our old religions. Then step 2 would be a space show where they would use this, and this is interesting because this is in 1994, and he said they would use laser projection of multiple holographic images, and that they could be allocating electronic microwaves in every person in the society to seduce societal thoughts if they don't comply, and that there's a kind of like the voice of God. So where from the satellite they can project thoughts and voices of every language into your thought space in your head. And so basically it's,
I know, it's insane.
Yeah, the thing about that is like they can mind control everybody to like this thing that happens, like, you know, this the light of the stars show kind of thing is kind of like the Messiah comes back. And this is the scary part too. They even talk about like the Christian rapture.
Antichrist.
Well, the Antichrist forms, but they talk about the rapture where they have tractor beams, like the same kind of thing how they do with cows right now, how they can pick up like you know, like for cattle mutilation, how like people see ships like with beams that pick up a cow. It's like they could pick up the people who aren't compliant. And he said something about how like that would happen within the first the fact that the rapture would happen within the first within hours of the actual light show happening. But anyway, so like they would have this big light show where they would have all the religions merge, and they would have like you're right, like the Antichrist, like the mergence of your Buddha and your Muhammad and your Jesus and whatever. And so it would really like go to people's religious like sector. And then the third wave,
that's what sells it. That was a huge point, actually. The whole selling point is the religion, because it said that this couldn't happen without people being on board for believing this enough that they're going to buy into this new religion.
Yep.
Which is basically the one world government, new world order.
And then the third wave is going to be like mind control, two-way thought patterns, like they can read your thoughts and send you thoughts through satellite. And he said it would be wise for you to consider how TV advertising, modern education, and various types of social pressure are used to manipulate these boundaries that you already have within yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And also that he mentioned the chips that would be in appliances and all that. And at that time, there were no smart appliances, but now everyone voluntarily buys smart appliances. So that's already happening.
Well, and that's the fourth step. The fourth step is like there would be an alien off-world invasion, and there would be like nuclear war strike threats, and then they would take everybody's nukes away, create a one world government, and start phasing out cash and phasing out independence, and implant microchips. and then it would be a dictatorship to control people, and then totalitarian police state. Like, so that was the whole, like, boom, here's the whole plan of like what's going to happen. And this is like basically put on by NASA.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the big question. Like when I was reading it, it's not that I mean, there's one part of me that just wanted to go grab popcorn and watch this whole spectacle like occur. If I weren't on planet Earth, you know, I'd be like, "Oh, this is an interesting movie. Wow, there's gonna be like a laser light show too." You know, like everything's involved. It's just insane. And there's another part of it is the real scary part for me is like that whole brain thing, because you're just like, okay, how do you trust in that whole discernment and knowing what are your own thoughts and that whole telepathy thing. And in fact, all this is happening. I think all of these 4 steps are happening simultaneously right now. Like, I don't think it's going like step 1. I mean, yes, it's into step 2, into step 3, but they're all simultaneously happening.
Well, this was warned about in 1994, right? So I obviously,
and he was also okay. There was the person that I was watching, I don't know if it was him, it's the Serge Monasti or Monast. He was a researcher and reporting about this. There was another reporter, I don't remember his name, but he was from Canada, right? And he was also killed. They're both died of heart attacks. That was the other thing. Apparently,
6 years old.
Yeah, like Project Bluebeam is really good at killing people with heart attacks. Oh, notice all the people that die of heart attacks who recently died of a heart attack.
Right. The Tanzanian president just died of a heart attack immediately after he called COVID bullshit and said that, like, you know, you can test papayas or goats or whatever, and then they come out positive with the PCR test. And then
and that wasn't the only thing he was questioning. He was apparently getting rid of people that were working in his country that were not from his country, because he said, well, we have enough employees here from our own country, so we'll just take care of our work and we'll pay our own people. And I guess other governments did not like that, or whoever knocked him off, basically.
Yeah, I've also heard Fidel Castro and the president, or one of the presidents of Venezuela before they overthrew it and it became what it is right now, basically talked about how Americans have these projection things where they can make you see what they want you to see. And I do know that there are a lot of tells of the weaponry. Like, there's this thing called the voice of God, where that is like a patent weaponry that we have, where we can project like voices into your head.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of UFO people have talked about that. And then that makes me like, I don't know.
Really, well, I wanted to go through the steps a little bit, but go ahead. Do you want to point?
What I was going to say is that, like, well, I guess maybe I will end with well, I'll say the thought now since it's on my mind, but it's kind of like goes back to that when we talked about personal sovereignty at one point. But I remember I was talking about how, like, the way I overcame fear of seeing other entities or this kind of stuff was this whole concept of, I don't care if you're an angel or if you're a demon. Like, I don't care if you are, you know, Jesus or the devil. The thing of it is like, and actually I just reread this or listened to this in the Kabbalion, whereas, like, if it's an entity, it's mortal. It is mortal. I mean, maybe it's more like lives a lot longer than us or something, but the same point, like, God is not a personification. God is within all of us, and God is the oneness. God is the all,
right?
And God is like not a human. It's a personification of something, not a personality. And so anyway, my whole thing was like, what you have in common with whatever the dark or the light is, you are also in existence. You guys are in existence at the same time, and you do not, like, especially after reading this whole Project Bluebeam, it just really confirmed to me more and more, you are not your thoughts. Just because you have a thought here or there, that is not who you are. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are what is looking through your eyeballs, watching your life experience happen. And you are like the stability within the viewer. That's who you are. So I think we get really confused because we all have billions of thoughts every single day. And when we have all these thoughts, we start identifying with them. And then we also start doing this hierarchy thing. And I think like that's what you see within like the channeling community, or just a lot of people who are really into religion or not, is like they're really scared of this, or like they really trust this, or they're, they don't ever just sit back and just
Observe it.
observe and not have judgment and be like knowing that you are the observer. That's who you are. So
Right.
in the end, even if this comes to pass or doesn't come to pass, or at this point, I think like this is too public. I don't think it would come to pass in this way exactly. Even though there is, even besides Project Blue Book, there is like the head of NASA, what was his name? Van Buren, the Nazi guy who then helped develop the first ballistic missiles, and he helped us get to the moon. I think it's Van
Was,
Braun or something.
yeah,
Anyway,
I don't know
on
his
his
name.
deathbed, he said, beware of an alien invasion, because it will be us acting like it'll be, it's basically all a fake stage thing. And
Yeah.
I also think when you look through like presidents, like what's his name, the actor guy,
Bush.
Reagan
Oh, oh,
was like,
Reagan.
oh, the only thing that would unite us would be an alien. Imagine if there was an alien invasion from above, like how we would
Right.
all be united as a human family.
Right. That
um
was all setting it up. And yeah, and then all after that, I think the Bush family also was into that whole
New World Order.
New World Order. Yeah, definitely. I think that was where it started like picking up speed, at least from my generation. It was around before. I think that you bring up great points, that we have to be careful about our thinking that our thoughts are our own. But actually, what you said kind of reminded me of something that I read right in this, which was about the United Nations. And it said the United Nations, the basis of the United Nations teaching, what? It says, no one owns his or her own personality. I don't really know what that means out of context,
They said you
but
don't get a new
anyway,
personality.
I mean, that's a little bit strange. Why is the UN even saying that? And I don't understand why that's a teaching. I have to look at
Yeah.
that in context to understand where that comes from. But nevertheless, it's said, and we have to think that what you're saying, if our thoughts are not really our own, because perhaps we're in the middle of all these waves and we're picking up on like an antenna on other people's thoughts or whatever is out there in the field, then yes, we have to constantly go back to observing them, which is why I think sometimes hearing all this makes me just think of the Wizard of Oz again. Like there's this big show going on. It's like, oh, all right, there's just this little person behind performing all this stuff and pulling the strings about making us scared or thinking that something's going the way it is. And if we forget how much power we actually do have, that's where I think that we can stay grounded or clear. And I don't know if you're saying like the rapture could come and like take all these people away. All right, I suppose that could happen, but anyway, anything could happen if your
I mean,
imagination brings you there. We just have to be careful of our thoughts.
I agree with that. And I interjected that at this point to just be like, don't get downhearted when you hear this stuff though, because it's like
Right,
it's just
exactly. Because
information
it's
to
heavy.
intake. It doesn't mean it's true, and it also doesn't, like, this could be the plan. Sure, this could have been some diabolical plan, but at the same time, it's like, I like at this point, I'm thinking mortal humans would not have this plan, because I don't care if you're what dictator you are. Like, this is a very long form game, one, and two, like this, you wouldn't what are you going to do, like, after you die? It's like, okay, cool, like they can go back to being independent sovereign beings after I die, but while I'm alive they're gonna, I don't know, like whoever would control this seems to be longer lived than us. Like that'd be the only thing that would make sense to me, why anybody would even want this kind of um any entity would want this kind of power, this kind of control. And that in itself though is like, it's the yin yang thing, right? Like this is too dark, this is too in the black, that's not sustainable. It's like you know, I don't even think it would go all the way to that pendulum swing. I think it would, you know, there's things
Right.
that would pull it back to light. The other thing that I find interesting, you know, that whole concept of, okay, I went to Chile like 2 summers ago or something to see that solar eclipse, and when I first landed in Santiago, it was like I landed, I was like, oh, I was like looking around. There was like this brown haze over everything. And I was like, man, I thought this was in the mountains. I thought you could see mountains in the background. And they were like, oh, they're there. That's just air pollution. You can't see them. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But I didn't really think about it because that's my first impression. I couldn't see the mountains at all. Well, it rained that evening. And the next morning before I headed out of Santiago to go up north to where the eclipse was, the Andes were like the Rocky Mountains on crack. They're like huge and they were just beautiful. I could not believe I couldn't see that the day before. They were all around the city of Santiago and they were just clear as a bell. You could see every single one of them. The rain, like we act as if like we can do all this manipulation stuff. We're going to go and we're going to dim the lights. We're going to put chemtrails and everything and this and that. And I'm sure we do tons of damage. But the reason we have to keep spraying chemtrails, or if you believe in that or not, the reason we have to keep on doing all of this stuff is because it, she herself, Earth herself, has an amazing cleansing process. Like rain can take any particles in the air and bring it down. Like we think that we're like such a all powerful like species, or that like some like weird governmental body is going to become these giant dictatorships or whatever, but we really don't realize that we have another consciousness that is bigger than us, that we live on, that trumps any alien or any
Right.
whatever. So
Well,
that's one.
yeah, we have to get back into nature, because I think that's true about nature having its own consciousness. Then water does have its own consciousness, and also to do water ceremonies, because water does get polluted also, bringing all that pollution back down, and our waterways do get polluted. So we have to constantly not even reprogram them, just tune into them somehow, or relate to them, or understand their consciousness, and how powerful water really is. And what is water? You know, well, that's another topic for another day. Like, water's just insane.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a
I
whole
mean, the thing about this whole Project Bluebeam thing for me is that, well, one of the things is that I feel like this is very similar to what the interview with the alien was like, because everything's convoluted. We have like half truths. So let's say this whole breaking down of the archaeological sites starts happening, and these earthquakes start happening, and then things get uncovered and things get revealed, like there was this ancient knowledge that told us our old religions were not correct, and they have proof to show us why. Okay, so maybe that will happen, and maybe that could happen, but that's probably true anyway, because how many
yeah.
people really think 100% that their religions are actually accurate? So of course they're going to buy into that, because they're already feeling that way. But
Well,
but anyway, there will never be a complete truth anyway. It just won't
mm-hmm.
happen, which is why we have to. We're in the process now of getting our own sovereignty, like you said, or a power back, and we have to realize how our potential really is huge as individuals. So us breaking down these systems, like these governments of religion that are so dogmatic, has to be done in order for us to move forward anyway as conscious beings. We don't need to think that we don't need a replacement religion per se, but we do have to tear some of that away, at least from our own mind, in order to grow as individual, as sovereign collective beings, as human, to the
Well,
next step. So I when I see some of this stuff in the Project Beam, I don't feel as it's so like bad per se, because I think some of this, I mean, the way it goes about doing it is, don't get me wrong,
right.
but I do think like some of these things actually have to happen in order for us to go through our evolution or our consciousness.
I agree with that. And I also, when I was looking at the archaeological thing, I was like, what we currently understand as our history isn't correct. Like there is so
Right.
much of the world that is still like, look at the Guatemalan basin with 60,000 structures unexcavated. Like, I mean, or more. I mean, you're talking about like, I used to think when I was a kid, like everything that's old's been found. Like, no, it hasn't at
No,
all, at all, at all.
no.
I mean,
Right. And what's below the oceans, on the ocean floors? We
exactly.
have
There's
no
so
idea.
much exploration to be done there. I mean, there was stuff before our biblical times. We
Right.
didn't start 6,000 years ago and that's it. Like
Exactly.
then we've been around way longer than we've been told by the official narrative, and there is like a lot of evidence of us being advanced at some point and then
Yeah.
somehow losing this from whatever being or whatever. I mean, for me, the scariest bit about this one is that even in the 90s apparently, and then we also, that video you sent me a video with, I can't remember what the guy's name was, but it was on Facebook. I'll try to link it here, but
Right.
I don't know if it'll work for everybody because it wasn't his
Yes.
Facebook link. But some guy, I wish I could remember his name right now, but
I'm
anyway,
bad with names. I don't
I know
remember.
I'm bad with names too.
Yeah, he was the ex-CIA agent.
Ex-CIA agent claims he's basically like a man in black, and he would go and personally kill
That.
UFO researchers or people who were researching this in depth, like in the earlier, I don't know, that one Samantha girl that he claims that he personally killed and that she still haunts him because
Right.
he said like it was kind of like Men in Black where they had that little pin that was like, look here.
After he killed somebody, he just was zapped and didn't remember anything. And he was also
Yeah.
brainwashed into doing it. So he just was programmed. It was like him
Right,
being
but he could
programmed to
kill
do
him in
it
a natural way. Like he could kill him with
the heart attack thing.
themes that with the heart attack thing. So the heart attack thing is pretty interesting. Makes me wonder if you wore like shielding fabric all the time, if that would help at all. I don't know.
Right.
Um but then also yeah, it really helps, or it really makes me not trust. Like first of all, I've had blue balls come into my light or come into my room to talk to me before. Like I've had them talk to me telepathically. I don't know that I can trust that anymore. Like, can you trust your dreams? Like, can you trust your thoughts? Like, what can you trust? It sucks.
Exactly.
Then
I
also I
know.
almost feel like some of this is almost science fiction-y to where um it's almost like we might be giving too much credit to a science fiction writer.
Right. It's true. Well, that's another good point, which is why I think it's like Interview with an Alien, where there's so much convoluted information and half truths. I can't help but remember this one line from the book that was like, we have half truths and distorted information that we're going on, and that's what we think is our history.
In the Kabbalion, it talks about half truths, how about everything in your reality will be a half truth.
Right. So then, yeah, what can you believe exactly? Well, I think something that came towards the end of this and some of my research for it was that, okay, yeah, we have to remember to go back to ourselves. So if a thought comes into our mind, just like you were saying, if something comes into our head, and we have to look at it, evaluate it, just observe what it is. And if it doesn't really resonate with who we are, then just let it go and just keep passing it along. Like we have to really be aware of our thoughts. The other thing is we have to step up the game. I mean, myself included, I feel like, okay, yeah, live a real virtuous life. It doesn't have to be virtuous boring, but in that, what are we doing and how are we treating our bodies or things around us, just being really aware of that and changing our lives. Oh, this was interesting. So after I read all this information, I'm like scrolling through Facebook, and I had Michaela Sheldon's, she's a channeler, feed, and she wrote about how she was doing a course with younger, not children, but maybe they were teenagers, and somebody proposed the question, like, how do you know, like, this channeled information, how do you know, like, pretty much like, how do you know where it's coming from, and how do you know what this information is, like, how do you discern? And so she said, well, this is a really good question. And she said before she started channeling, doesn't make it necessarily true, but before she started actually channeling, she changed her lifestyle completely. Like, she went vegan. She actually, I don't know if she went vegan. I'm sorry, I don't want to misrepresent her, but she just changed her lifestyle. I remember her
Really
saying
got into
something
her
about
water,
getting
started,
organic food, changing her water. Exactly. And and then she was like constantly making sure that she was like staying with her highest self. But how do you know what these entities are that you're now channeling? And that point was brought up with this whole Project Bluebeam thing, because all these people are starting to channel now. All of a sudden, there's like every other person is a channeler. Where are they getting this information from? Like, who's feeding them this information? It needs to be looked at. You should be always asking these types of questions.
Well, and I do feel like discernment, your own truth, it's like a lot of people have talked about this in terms of like you can do muscle testing where you kind of can, but for me, how my body reacts to, like I notice and I think I've talked about this before, but like I notice that like if something's it feels true for me, I get a bodily like opening in my chest. It's almost like I'm like, oh, really? Tell me more. And then if I don't really resonate with it, it's like my body knows before me. I'll find like a almost like a pushback, or like my shoulders will kind of go like, oh.
True. So how did you react when you started reading this material?
Like
did your body do anything?
Like also another thing was even in the article that this Sergey wrote before he died, or the presentation that he did, he even referenced Dr. Robert Becker, who did The Body Electric, which I've read that book, and it is a very amazing book, and I hope everybody reads it. And I really do, even like when you look at the works of Tesla or whatever, like we are electric beings. Our cells split at certain frequencies. Like we are basically frozen light. That's what we are as existence. Like, if you want to break it down to the base root. So he talks about kind of like some experiments that he did. So what rang true for me was that their ability to do these kind of like maybe this is some of the stuff that was hidden of Tesla's, like maybe like the radio waves that can talk to you from the satellite, or maybe like so they can control our thought voices. Like I don't know to what extent that sounds like, if it sounds like there's a loud voice in your room and you're like what, or if that's, I don't know what, but so for me, kind of like those technologies, I personally, the whole Antichrist thing, like calling it Antichrist too, like that didn't really resonate with me. Also, part of that doesn't feel true that it's going forward, because as a collective human society, I feel like we are way less religious than we have been in many years. Like this decade, we've become way more into, well, I believe this versus I believe this. I've even seen from the time I was 15 to being 38 years old, I've seen a huge transition in how effective religion is on the collective. It doesn't have the stronghold that it used to for whatever reason. So for me, that didn't, the Antichrist thing didn't ring true. The alien invasion, I feel like they've done a lot of testing with that. Like I look into that all the time. People just don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about archaeology either. Like I know some cool stuff that's happened. People just don't care. Like I have one of my friends from high school. She's from Bulgaria, and there's a really cool like Roman temple, like not too far from her house there. And I was telling her, like when I went to visit her, she like didn't want to come. So her brother took me, and we went and visited this really cool ruin, and she said, boring. Like she's never even been. She doesn't care. It's like the most well-preserved, like amazing little Roman town. And it's just like, no one goes there, and their like auditorium is just perfect, in perfect condition. Just, and
yeah, you're like living history.
And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know this beautiful exists. It's in like Plavov, or like around Plavov in Bulgaria. And she's just like, ugh, like boring. Like anytime I mention anything about archaeology, it's just like, that's like from old dead people. She's like, doesn't matter. That's like, and it's not, I'm not picking on her. Yeah. I'm just saying, good luck trying to get people to be like, oh, ancient texts what do you think Dead Sea Scrolls are? Like, what do you think like the Pistis Sophia, or or some of this other like all these books that they did take out of the
Yeah.
Bible. People don't give a shit. They're not going to really research
Well,
things further.
true, but maybe they just changed their tactics a bit along the way, because I do think we could be going down the slippery slope of totalitarianism, right?
Well, we are,
Or
yeah, but I
at
think that
least
they've
this.
transitioned it to the virus and other ways.
Yeah, well, that's partially it. And also the fact that we are losing our religion type of thing, and we're not so fundamental, although there's still some pretty strong fundamentalists, or very strong religious people, whoever they are. I just
But I
usually
bet
don't.
not compared to the 1950s or something. Like I bet you if you took the at on average, like the person from maybe like 1940 or maybe
Right.
1900
But I
versus.
think that that's the point. So people are becoming less religious in that sense, but wouldn't it be wouldn't it be good to give them a new type of religion now, whatever this is, like whatever this thing is? He kept calling it in that article the new, it was the new age, I guess they called it, yeah, the new age religion, universal
Well, I guess
religion.
that's here.
So that is like, it's already it is happening, whatever that means. And it's weird because I'm like, wait a minute, like I like fall into this category, like what, all right, I don't know, I guess when it comes down to it, we're all part of this earth and there's no way to escape it. So any of these things that are coming up, we're just part of it, whatever it is, at whatever level,
I mean,
however much you want to get involved in it.
I do think that and I've definitely been really conscious with myself, especially I don't know when it started, if it was just like a couple years ago or something, or maybe it's been kind of slowly going on. I don't watch TV at all.
Right, neither
I
do I.
don't really watch movies anymore. Every once in a while I watch them, but I also do this thing where like I know that they can program us and I know that they are programming us and I know that like I
Exactly.
don't want these people's influence on me.
Right.
So I will be like kind of putting up protective shields before I watch everything, like, and to like make sure that I'm discerning about like what's being fed to me and why. What's the
Yeah.
motive behind what they're trying to say to me?
Right.
So I watch everything like that and it just makes it kind of less enjoyable, to be honest. Like I don't I don't preach to everybody to be like me or to be like this, but my entertainment is research, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely more interesting. I don't watch movies or TV either, so I always feel out of the loop when people talk to me about series they're watching or whatever. But I do find it interesting that occasionally there'll be a series that somebody will talk to me about, and it's some kind of science fiction or it's some kind of new reality. I think there was one, I forgot the name of it. It was about it's a series of these women um, who are really like forced to dress like an old way, and I
Oh
think
yeah, yeah,
they,
yeah. It's
like, there's polygamy,
The
and I
Handmaid's
don't remember.
Tale.
Right,
I
okay,
read
so
that and
I never read it, I never watched it, and then
it's
I'm just
really
like, oh
horrible.
wait,
But
but there are these things going on in these societies, like, oh, it's so some of what people are watching, the science fiction even, that's actually coming up a lot in some of the research that we're doing anyway. So there is a lot of overlay, and I think, well, those people have watched that or have influenced it in some way, or they're writing about it, and we're finding that, or whatever comes up in our research, it's still overlap. It's almost like pop culture in a sense, even if our research, not to say that you shouldn't research. I definitely think that that's the best that you could do, because at least you're choosing and trying your hardest to find information that's interesting to you, rather than having it being fed to you. You go to seek it out rather than to just be
like
passive
what
about
they
it, in a
give what
sense.
they want to give me.
But yeah,
Well,
yeah, but anyway, I just think
the
that was an
Handmaid's
interesting
Tale,
thing.
it's weird because I do feel like they feed us small bits, like that concept of the vampire, where it's like they have to be invited in. So it's like you have to, like, if you're gonna use this app, you have to agree to their terms and conditions. It's like you have to agree to let them in. So I kind of feel like there is definitely a vampiric type sense, where you have this like, we're going to slowly give you little bits of information. Like I was thinking when I was reading this Project Blue Book stuff today, our Project Bluebeam was what's that Spider-Man movie? Okay, it had Jake Gyllenhaal, and it's like the newest Spider-Man movie. I watched it not too long ago, but basically Spider-Man goes on a Europe vacation with his friends and or his classmates, and he just wants to be a kid. He wants to be a teenager. He doesn't want to be Spider-Man when he's over in Europe. But then they keep on doing all these. There's an alien threat in all of the towns that he goes to, and it ends up being like Jake Gyllenhaal is kind of like the villain in it or whatever. But it's a projection show, and even Spider-Man is duped. He doesn't know that it's a projection show until like he figures it out at the end. But their technology is so amazing, and what they're looking at in the sky really does look like monsters and beams going down and things blowing up. It's like a giant stage show, but he doesn't even know it, and he finally figures it out later on. And you're kind of going like, it's weird that they kind of feed us little bits and pieces of this in a lot of different media. What I thought was really scary about The Handmaid's Tale, like I read it, and actually listened to it on audio back in like maybe I was in Peru, like I was like in 2016 or 15, which I was surprised they made a TV series out of it. Actually, shouldn't be surprised because it's depressing as hell. It even ends depressing. It doesn't have a good ending. But anyway, spoiler alert.
Say that before.
Say that before. Yeah. Spoiler alert, does not have a good ending. It's basically like they take modern day today, and then all of a sudden like they just like repress the women, right? And so how they do it is the first thing they do is like she goes to like pay for just like a purchase at a store, and her credit cards are declined and everything's declined, and their bank accounts are just one day here, next day completely gone. And so like they have no resources to even get out of town, to even get gas to go anywhere, or they can't even leave if they wanted to. Like she goes to pick up her daughter from school, and she's not allowed to. And she like she can't go anywhere because her kid's taken from her money's taken from her husband like comes home and is like, wait, what's going on? And it's a really sick story, like and I guess the allegory is maybe to show how women used to live. I'm not really 100% sure what the allegory is, but the problem is that you have stories like this, and when you listen to them or watch them or whatever, use your discernment and also be like, what we think about and what we put our energy and our focus on grows. So I find it bizarre that I don't know, I was talking to some family members today, and they were obsessing about some murder cases or some murder show or whatever. Do you know how many murder series there are and miss these mystery murders? This is like not, yes, I realize there are some sick shit that happens in the world, I get it, but you don't need to know every detail of how that happened and how they
Exactly.
like I don't even think that's healthy for your soul to get
I
that
know.
and that involved and that obsessed with something that sick. And then I'll be like, why does this fascinate you? Like, no judgment, just like, honestly, why does this fascinate you? And it's just like, well, I don't know, it's just so
Right.
I can be discerning about.
Yeah. I don't. People are into it.
Yeah, they're really into it.
Well, it's
that's programmed into us from a very early age, and it's a good
exactly
portion of the percentage of what's out there is a murder mystery.
right. Exactly. Well, people like a good mystery to solve, and then then they became gory and bloody, and people like crime and stuff. I don't know. I don't know why. I've never been able to watch it. Whenever I watch TV with mom, she likes crime shows and detective shows and whatever, and I never ever liked them. Well, maybe for like a very short time, but then I was like, well, I don't like this anymore. Like it makes me not feel comfortable. I don't like seeing murder. I don't like talking about it. I don't like you said, it's bad for the soul. It just didn't sit with me, so I just always had to get rid of it. And even movies like that, like those type of action movies that are constantly shooting stuff, and I just don't like it. Like, I don't know, I guess it's what sells, and you're right, it is programming.
And the thing is like, I used to just be like, and I'm still gonna say like, teach their own. I'm not judging you for liking this, but what I am saying is that you need to be like, this is a spiritual school like this incarnation, right? You need to be building yourself, not tearing yourself down, and start thinking about that in what you consume, because it's not just consumption of things we input into our body, it's also like what we put into our eyes, what we put into
Yeah,
our
into our
ear,
mind, for
you know.
sure.
And like, yeah, people like can dog on me for cussing or something, yeah, okay, maybe that's bad, but I'm talking like I I don't, yeah, like I, like you said, I don't want to watch slasher movies and things. I don't want to normalize people in pain.
Right, exactly. That's what's happening, the normalization. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we have to, again, because I always want to think, well, what can we do? Because then you feel so powerless. But we have to go back to taking responsibility for our own thoughts, our own actions. And even if these thoughts are being whatever thrown out and all these or targeted to, to mass populations, or even if that is a possibility, then okay, then we have to just establish our our direct connection to source, to God, like you said, that's it within all of us, and we all have our birthright. We can't forget our birthright, which is to live as a sovereign being, because otherwise we're just kind of giving up the fight, or we're just handing it over to someone else. So even if there were ever this whole world totalitarian state that might unfold at some level, I mean, first of all, I think that they're just, I'd like to think in the whole 5D consciousness, and that's just not going to happen in the world that I'm going to live in, but who knows. But in some way, again, there's still something there. You still have power. At some level, it's not like you're a complete victim to everything
Well,
of circumstance.
and I do think it is the thing where, okay, thoughts aren't you, but thoughts are still powerful. And also you can create thoughts. You can,
Right.
they don't just have to come to you and you pull
That's right. You can
them.
still
You
create
can
your own. You're a
also from your
creator.
internal self create them. And
Exactly.
I noticed like within meditation teachings, there's a lot of them that try to talk about like watch what comes out of you versus what comes into you, like, and really try to learn that within yourself. So I think lately I've been thinking about, well, why don't we just think magically? Like, why don't we think about, you know
Doing able to whatever. Yeah.
yeah,
Being
just
able to
like
fly or
doing,
whatever.
yeah, do magical, like think of ways to clean up the air, make everybody healthy, just build immune systems, like take away whatever it is that you don't think is beneficial to humanity. Like, let's just
Yes.
you build it
Exactly.
yourself in your head, start
That's
projecting
correct.
and putting more and 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 more of
Right.
that stuff out, because
That's how
actually,
we become powerful.
and those,
And actually, that's a good point, because like there's some part of me that just doesn't want to go over this whole Bluebeam thing and just be like, it's so big, it's so crazy. But then there's part of me that just wants to get it out and be like, okay, that's great. I'm just going to like, okay, I ate my popcorn. I watched that story and I'm just going to put it over there. And now I'm going to live my life and constantly go back and put out my good thoughts and put out my good vibes and receive my good vibes from other and from my source light. And that's as much as I can do and live my life, but
well,
not
but
get like
the
crazy
the
about it.
good thing about this though is like, okay, we're aware that there is claims that there is technology that they could project a giant light show of and you and I have seen UFOs together, right? So I mean, like, we
Right.
know that something is going on. Okay, well, so we can back that up in many different ways, but it is one of those things where I think that this is a way, learning about this stuff as a knowledge base, not necessarily taking it in and living with it and making it our truth, but knowing that it is something in the background of what we have in our knowledge base, makes it to where we can build our discernment. So that's a good tool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Especially if there were, I mean, this year is big, right? Everyone's been talking about people in astrology or people just in general. It's coming out in the news already that all these disclosures are happening around aliens and contacts and all this thing. And they're saying that, okay, this is from what I heard, the rest of the year is going to continue in this direction. So there is a lot already coming out in mainstream about this. So my question is, well, why? What's the objective? Is this the objective to warm us up to this whole alien invasion thing? And what is that going to look like? So there's that part of me that like, okay, if that show happens one day, not just to be aware that, okay, not to say that it's 100% like Bluebeam, because I don't think everything is. I do think I absolutely believe that there's actual other beings. We're not the only being here, and there are other beings that are light beings that are working with us or for us or our future selves or whatever it is. There's so much we don't know. I don't think it's just completely constructed in this negative way here. So I don't want to think like, oh, everything I see is fake, because that would not be good either. But you're right. It has to be back to the discernment, maybe, I guess, doing muscle testing, figuring out what's right.
That's also a very good point, though, that you brought up about are they trying, like, what's the motive of this happening? Are they trying to say there's going to be an alien invasion? And I want to assure everybody, even though, like, you don't ever take anybody else's recommendation, like, make sure this is in your own discernment, but they've been here forever. There are
lots of stories
from there are stories from
ancient civilizations, cultures.
There's the Vimas from India. You have like there's Luxembourg or Nuremberg, Germany, Battle of 1514. There's like 1890, Aurora, Texas. Like there has been
this has been going on for a long time
before we even had airplanes.
Any kind of
long time. They've been here. Whoever they are, I think at this point, I don't think they're from outer space. I think they're a breakaway inner Earth civilization that's from like a past ancient civilization. Whatever, maybe that's not true, but that's where I'm at this current state in my time. Maybe it's time traveling. That could be a thing too. I don't really know. But end of the day, if they wanted to come do an Independence Day, like, yeah, buddy, we're going to take over the world, and just like Signs or something like the movie Signs, that's not going to happen. That's like not ever going to happen. There's nothing to fear within the alien thing, unless it is a Project Bluebeam where it's our own governments, our own human beings trying to impose as if there's something else. So don't worry about it. It is not ever going to be the way that it's projected onto you to be.
Okay, closing thoughts. It's tough. It's a huge topic. I think it's important to bring to people's attention, and people are aware that this is a possible thing that's real, that's not conspiracy, that's actually in existence, although it may be at different levels, because again, this is from 1994, or at least that was the last big exposure of it, I think. That's my understanding, but I don't want to leave everybody feeling bad about it. I do think that we have our own self-empowerment, and it's just our birthright. So we have to go back to not being afraid of what's said with all this, and realizing that we can't just get stuck in the negative there, and go back to whatever practices work, because even if there's all this thought and mind control happening, we still have our own mind. We're not going to lose it completely. It's our right.
I well said. I like that too. Yeah. I mean, I just think, I think I've said like what, I mean, basically be look up always, be discerning on what you see, be discerning about the thoughts that are coming into your head, and, also realize that you are a sovereign being, and that, and this is within anything in life, go back to the you. Okay. Nothing is higher or lower than you. Like, stop playing the hierarchy game. Just be you. Okay. And I think that will be, that's a nice little bow.
Yeah. Just be you. Love it.
Yeah.
So another way that I feel that we can help protect ourselves from all this is to increase our heart mind connection, which is what a lot of people are talking about right now, like all the big Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and the Heart Math Institute, what all the work that they do. And it's to increase our magnetic field around us, because the more that it's amplified, then first of all, it has a really good effect on others and what's outside of us, but it protects us as well. So we have less chance of illness, and we have less chance of foreign invasion, maybe. So that is something important.
Yeah, and grounding, like getting the electrodes of the actual earth on the bare ground into your, like, there is scientific proof that helps with inflammation. It also, and I also feel like it kind of centers you and grounds you into coming back into your own self, because we do live in an artificial way with tennis shoes and with like being so separate from the actual earth that we're part of. So yeah, just like when people say, I just need to be a little grounded, that literally means, like, as an electric being that we are, you need to ground your electricity to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Not as hard, as difficult as that is, but I feel like also I do think that if weaponry can be created that can do all these projections with electromagnetics, then so can positive stuff. And
Right.
we should all maybe start looking more into whatever that is, whether that's scalar waves or biotuning things or certain frequencies. In fact, I was listening today to a podcast on the mysterious universe about it. I think it was called Plant something. Anyway, he goes into how there's been studies of playing certain notes, circuit frequencies to plants, and like some of them will grow or not grow, or certain music, even like they like Bach and like classical Indian music apparently, and they don't really particularly care for rock and roll. And you can kill a plant or make it thrive based on, it's kind of Dr. Emoto's work too, like the frequency
Frequency.
yeah, frequency matters, tunes matter, sounds matter, and we're going to find more and more of that going forward. So keep your mind's eye open to that possibility, and like let's try to figure out ways in which we can use that positively rather than against us as a mind control thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. It's good. It brings us back to self-empowerment no matter what's happening. Yeah. And turning off the news, definitely turning off electronics when you can. And that helps with the grounding. And also, I mean, eating well and all that kind of thing. But I know. How are we going to increase telepathy? Because, you and I talked about this in the past, that we wanted to practice telepathy and sending messages and all that. And also like, well, yeah, let's just stick with telepathy. So how do you think, knowing this information now, has that changed anything about your desire to learn telepathy, or is it going to, change anything on it?
In fact, I think it would be this is even sure, it shows us it's possible. That's another thing with Bluebeam. They talk, the two-way communication, and that we are telepathic in nature. Like they basically admit that, or if that's true, or I mean, whatever, if this isn't just science fiction. So it makes it to where, like, I mean, me sending you a telepathic message is not going to be a negative. I mean, I feel like, yeah, I feel like we need to practice more. We need to get better at this.